Hi there, welcome to my channel. I'm Jaz Sims, and if you don't know already, we're doing a little series on this channel where I take the most interesting and well-known Sims from the entire franchise, doing a deep dive into their stories and bringing them up to date in The Sims 4. Today we're going to be taking a closer look at Agnes Crumplebottom. I'm sure you've heard of her by now, but I'm willing to bet that you'll find out something new about her in this video. Agnes is the daughter of Simon and Prudence Crumplebottom, who appear in The Sims 2 and The Sims 3. In both of the games, they're already deceased of old age, but their tombstones can be found in the Goth family graveyards, and both their ghosts still haunt the Goth manor. The reason that they haunt the Goth manor is that they also had another daughter called Cornelia, who went on to marry Gunther Goth and give birth to Mortimer. This means that Agnes is Mortimer's maternal aunt. We first see Agnes appear in The Sims Hot Date, which is an expansion pack for the first edition of The Sims, released in 2001. Her clothes are very conservative. She wears a button-down grey dress with a pillbox hat and a little black handbag. Her name is also very fitting, as Agnes is derived from Hagnis, which is a Greek word that means chaste, pure or holy. I'm thinking about it, that's probably where the word hag comes from. Her last name sounds like Crumplebottom, which is a good description of her personality. She's a very prude and angry old woman who hates public displays of affection and will react negatively to any Sims being romantic with each other in her vicinity. It makes her so angry that she can actually whack them with her handbag. So she was obviously made as a funny character, considering this was an expansion pack about romance. But her biography explains why she is this way, and it turns out it's actually a little less funny than it seems. She unfortunately lost her husband Robert many years ago and never quite got over the emotional damage it caused her. The cause of his death is explained in the item description of the Crumplebottom chandelier in The Sims Vacation. He was said to be standing underneath the chandelier when it fell down 2 stories and crushed him. The Sims 2 takes place after The Sims 1 chronologically. By now she's deceased and she appears as a ghost that passed away from old age. There is a character in The Sims 2 Nightlife that shares her appearance and behaviour, known as Mrs. Crumplebottom, but these are not the same characters. Nightlife is set many years in the future compared to The Sims 2, and to add to this, Mrs. Crumplebottom actually carries a portrait of her great aunt Agnes Crumplebottom in her handbag. Needless to say, she completely idolises her. If the player has The Sims 2 Seasons installed and makes a wish in the well, there's a chance that Mrs. Crumplebottom can crawl out of the well and hit the player with her purse, which would have given me nightmares as a child. So now coming over to The Sims 3, which is set before The Sims 1, we see a much younger Agnes living alone in Sunset Valley. She is a widow still, but surprisingly she hasn't actually met Robert yet, which means she was a widow to another Sim before him. Her first husband was called Eric Darling, and unfortunately he passed away on their honeymoon. Her description says Agnes Crumplebottom hadn't even changed her last name into her husband's when an unfortunate accident on her honeymoon ended their marriage. Between her growing bitterness and her husband's ghost scaring away gentlemen callers, only the bravest Sim would ever try to win her heart and fortune now. So Eric unfortunately never really left. His gravestone can be seen in Agnes's front yard, and his ghost still wanders around the house and interacts with her as if nothing happened. So poor Agnes was really frozen in time and she really couldn't move on. A really heartbreaking detail is that there appears to be a baby room being decorated in that house, and the work stopped halfway through. I prefer to think that this was where they were just preparing ahead, and with Eric's sudden death, obviously all of her plans came to a stop. Something that I only learnt just recently is that in the Sims 3 Supernatural expansion pack, we have 3 more Crumplebottom family members, although it's not actually known how they're related to her exactly. They're 3 sisters called Belinda, Beatrice and Bianca. The 3 sisters are witches, and the fact that they all have the same initials is a reference to either Charmed or Hocus Pocus. So the 3 sisters are very different. Bianca is the youngest sister and the most feisty. She thinks everyone either wants her or wants to be her, and she thinks that her sisters are jealous of her youth and beauty, which can make her quite unbearable to live with. She has a few points in the guitar skill, and her life aspiration is to become a pop star. The middle sister Belinda is the mediator between her 2 sisters. She is mainly trying to have a quiet life and is kind of the glue that keeps the household together. She wants both of her sisters to get along, even if they are really both opposites from each other. She loves cooking and works in the culinary career. And then we have Beatrice, who is a lonely grump who always has her nose in a book and strives to be the perfect witch. She's obsessed with perfection and has really high standards, and this means that she is normally quite condescending to other witches and doesn't ever see anyone else's success. To me, she definitely sounds the most like Agnes. So we didn't see any Crumplebottoms in The Sims 4 until the release of the Cottage Living expansion pack in 2021 that introduced the beautiful countryside world of Henford-on-Bagley. Agnes appears as one of the village's NPCs who owns a gardening stall with her cousin Agatha. The 2 are opposites, and I'm beginning to see quite a pattern with the Crumplebottom ladies here. Agatha is playful, flirty and very social, and Agnes is very much the same old Aggie that we know and love. If you do get caught by Agnes and you happen to have the Growing Together expansion pack installed, they will unlock the Crumplebottom milestone in their Sims panel. So until the summer of 2023, that was it for Agnes's story, and then they dropped the Horse Ranch expansion pack. This was pivotal in the Crumplebottom timeline as we got a huge plot twist. The Sims released an official video on their TikTok account confirming a backstory about an elusive NPC called Roberto Crumplebottom. So in this video we see the mysterious character used to be married to Agnes. They can be seen arguing quite a lot, and then Robert sees the chandelier and he seems to have some sort of idea at that point, and then the rest is history. He gets out of there after seemingly faking his own death. Although they did seem to be quite unhappily married, there's no way that faking your own passing is a normal response to that situation. We are talking about a fully grown man who willingly got married to a woman that he probably knew quite well at this point. Agnes has been bitter since her first marriage, so I just feel like faking your own death after you know that your spouse has already lost a partner is like the coldest thing that you could ever do. Like, I'm sure Agnes wouldn't have been the best person to be around if you brought up divorce with her, but I am sure that there are other ways of doing that without giving her any more trauma. There is actually a little speculation around if Robert actually did fake his own death. Like I said earlier, he appears as an NPC, and if you build up enough trust in him, you can actually learn some of his nectar recipes. He can actually teach you how to make vitality nectar, which is essentially a revival potion that allows you to resurrect Sims from the dead. I mean, this could just be a funny little reference to the fact that he did fake his own death before, or maybe he actually did die and just knew that he could take this special nectar recipe and revive himself after the fact. There is actually a very interesting detail in the Horse Ranch expansion pack. So one of the townies appears to have been resurrected by a local hero, and it makes that nectar revival theory all the more plausible. I will just say that it's a little surprising that Robert went for such a similar name to his married name when he was still with Agnes. Roberto Crumplebottom, Robert Crumplebottom. I mean, you'd assume that he'd go for something different if he was trying to cover his tracks. And also, given how traditional and conservative Agnes is, it seems a little strange that she wouldn't take her husband's last name, but I guess the Crumplebottom family was so prestigious and wealthy that it was probably in everyone's best interest if he took her name. Okay, so starting off in Create a Sim. As you can see, Agnes looks a tiny little bit different. I do have the height slider mod installed, so if she looks a little bit smaller, that will be why. I didn't need to change her too much. She's been around since The Sims 1 and she's really recognisable at this point, so I just tweaked her face to look a little bit less cartoony and a little bit more realistic. I wanted to make her just a tiny bit more pretty than her original version, although you can still definitely see that she looks angry and annoyed all the time. As you can see, I did give her a few more traits, so I made her hot-headed, nosy, a loner, unflirty and a bookworm. This is really going off the previous games and her kind of backstory in general. So I kept her outfits pretty much the same. I don't think I've ever seen Agnes Crumplebottom do any type of physical activity in my games, so I don't think we'll be seeing her in her athletic outfit. I did give her untied hair for her sleepwear outfit, and it's kind of weird to see her without her like very pristine updo, but I feel like she wouldn't wear that to bed, and it kind of humanises her a bit to see her with a different hairstyle. I don't know why. So you might be thinking, why is Agnes wearing normal clothes for her swimwear? And it's because I read somewhere that in the original Sims game where she first appeared, she used to get in the swimming pool fully clothed, so I thought that would be quite a fun detail to add in. And she's got slightly different coloured outfits for hot weather or cold weather, but all pretty much the same. She still has the life aspiration to become a freelance botanist as she loves gardening. I really enjoyed doing her preferences on this one because I feel like she's got quite a defined personality. So she likes cross stitch and knitting, which is a reference to the previous games where she used to carry around knitting needles in her handbag. Obviously she loves the colour grey, she loves gardening, and she likes small talk and gossip. I feel like a lot of old ladies just really like small talk, and obviously a lot of dislikes based around romance and silly behaviour, because obviously she is very well known for being quite serious and prude. She does like a bit of gossip because she is a nosy sim. If you don't know, the nosy trait was brought in with the Foreign expansion pack, and she is the first person that I thought of when I saw this new trait. I feel like she's quite heavily based on upper class, snooty British ladies. They're very prim and proper, they don't like silliness, and they don't like too much displays of romantic affection, but they are definitely quite prone to a bit of gossip and a bit of curtain twitching. Now, we don't know too much about Agatha compared to Agnes, but we do know that the two share a garden shop business together. And an interesting detail about Agatha is that her default emotion is actually playful instead of just fine. Like I said earlier, she is the polar opposite of Agnes, so she's bubbly, playful, and a bit of a flirt, much to the dismay of Agnes. So compared to Agnes, Agatha doesn't take herself too seriously. She is friendly, romantic, and cheerful. I believe she initially had the snob personality trait, but I changed that because I feel like if she's playful and doesn't take herself too seriously, she probably wouldn't be a snob. I also dressed her down a little bit in her everyday wear, but she kept that traditional and recognisable aesthetic in a few of her other outfit categories. But she's definitely the more relatable out of the two. I gave her the neighbourhood confidant aspiration, which means that she really loves being part of the community and bonding with her neighbours. Obviously, her preferences are very much opposite to Agnes, so she is much more keen on positive interactions with other Sims. She likes bubbly Sims like herself. She likes getting to know other people, and she has just a little bit more of a carefree personality, so that means she's into a few more hobbies. Also, just like her cousin, she really enjoys gardening, and she's actually an expert gardener. I feel like she's the version of Agnes if Agnes hadn't gone through a lot of traumatic things in her life. And I feel like Agatha and Agnes live together, so Agatha probably does get to see a little bit of Agnes's soft side every now and then. And I mean, if they didn't like each other, they definitely wouldn't live together. So Agatha is that kind of nice that she can see through the harsh exterior that nobody else can see through. Maybe she goes around trying to sort of warm people up to Agnes a little bit. So before we take a look at their beautiful new home, I'm sure you're thinking, well, normally Agatha and Agnes are NPCs and they don't actually live in a lot. The game won't recognise them as NPCs once they've been played, so normally that is an issue. But I've figured out a workaround, obviously, because I want to modify all of the NPCs for my save file. So to do this, I actually downloaded a mod that allows you to assign NPC roles to Sims. So once I'm done making them over, I will just exit back out of the household, delete the automatically game generated new NPC, and go back and assign that role back to the Sim. Do keep in mind though, if you do play the save file or if you do want to download them off of the gallery, you can't actually play with them. As I said, it will remove their NPC trait. The build is called Crumplebottom Estate and it was put on the gallery by Abby Arashi, so a massive thank you to them. It's absolutely stunning and it is the very typical wealthy English family living in the countryside kind of vibe. This lot was so perfect for the Crumplebottoms, and I'm actually really obsessed with buildings like this in the English countryside in real life. If we come to the back garden over here, we can see that Agatha is busy working away, tending the garden. Originally, these weren't actually plants, they were just built by flowers, which was very pretty, but I thought if they both really love gardening and they have a gardening shop business, they're probably going to have actual plants in their garden. So I spent a really long time scouring debug, which is basically the hidden menu that shows you all of the hidden objects in the game, and manually planting each and every flower. Some of them aren't in season, but I think you'll agree it does look really pretty with all the different colours and textures, and they can actually tend to the flowers in the garden. Like I said, not that you can actually play with this household, but if you do ever visit them, they'll likely be tending to the flowers in the garden. So starting off with Agnes, as you can see, she is busy currently steeping some tea from a teapot. Just as a side note, I absolutely love the cottage living expansion pack. I don't think I've ever gone over this before, but I'm obviously very English, as you can hear by my accent, but I don't live in England anymore. But I really like anything kind of English countryside. I'm kind of obsessed with it in real life, so I absolutely love seeing this in The Sims, and I was so happy when they announced the cottage living expansion pack in 2021. I filled out Agnes's skill panel with all of the relevant things that I think she might get up to in her spare time, so gardening, cross stitch, knitting as well, and then some more basic ones like cooking, logic and writing. I just looked at her relationship panel and it's quite hilarious. So obviously she isn't the most social of Sims. Most of her relationships are made up of Patchy the Scarecrow and all of the chickens. I haven't really taken her out into the world to interact with anyone yet, so that's why, but it's pretty funny just to see an entire full panel just full of chickens. As for bonus traits, I gave her argumentative, twisted heart, responsible, good manners, independent, uncontrolled emotions, high self-esteem, and sacred knitting knowledge. I gave her some milestones. Now, this was a feature added in the Growing Together expansion pack. Obviously, she's had a very turbulent life, so I wanted to add those details into her current self. So in order, she fell in love with Roberto Crinkletop. Obviously, the game registers him as Roberto Crinkletop now. She got engaged to him, got married to him, and then was widowed by him. Now, obviously, she wasn't in reality, but of course, for her, she was widowed by him, and that marked her in her life, so I added that in there. Poor Agnes has an atrocious reputation through her actions, and she can't really blame anyone but herself. So this just means that Sims will phone her up out of the blue and kind of grill her for being a bad person, which I think probably would happen if she was that horrible to people in real life. And Sims are more likely to dislike her from the get-go when they meet her. So as you could see in her relationship panel, there was Patchy the Scarecrow. Now, Patchy is actually an object that you can get in Build By. You can actually interact with him, so you can chat with him, ask for gardening tips, check his pockets for seeds, or examine train him. So if you do these enough times, he'll actually begin to come to life at certain times of the day, and you can basically just interact with him as a normal sim. He will do default actions like tend to your garden, plant seeds, and just kind of do general maintenance around the garden. This is one of Agnes's only acquaintances for the moment. I feel like that was really fitting. She could only get along with a kind of semi-animate object. She's misunderstood by a lot of people, and I feel like the Scarecrow is just not quite human enough to be annoyed by her like the rest of the world. Agatha has also got quite a lot of skills, so cooking, baking, a few things that Agnes would probably turn her nose up at a little bit, like charisma, comedy, mischief, mixology, dancing, but she's a very well-rounded sim. So amongst her traits we have more friendly ones like kindness ambassador, socially gifted, beloved, confidant as well. She's responsible, a mediator. I feel like the mediator trait might come in a little bit useful for when she's trying to patch things over between Agnes and different townies. But generally people kind of look up to Agatha, and contrary to Agnes, she has a great reputation. So coming over to the build, as you can see, it's a very traditional countryside estate type house. So the interior is very cozy, but also you can tell that it's a wealthy and rich family that have owned this place. The deco style is very vintage, and we've got items like record players and chess tables and pianos. We've also got a really beautiful planted up conservatory area. I'm not sure what you call it in your country, but we'd call this a conservatory, where it's basically like a glass house attached to your house. The lighting is beautiful in here, and I figured that Agatha could probably sit there and paint if she wanted to. And we also have this little flower arranging table in here. Coming out to the front lawn really quickly, we've got quite a touching detail. So it's the grave of Eric Darling. It's still in the front yard, but his ghost has moved on now to the afterlife and doesn't bother Agnes anymore. This has been the case for quite a while at this point, I feel like, because she obviously got remarried to Roberto and turned into an elder. But I thought that would be a really nice touch to kind of leave the gravestone of Eric in the front garden. Although his ghost kind of did stick around for a little too long, I think they were really, really in love. And so he deserves a place in her garden. So coming upstairs, there's a little office over here. It's probably Simon Crumplebottom's when he was still alive. Got a spare bedroom over here, which I'm guessing would have been the Crumplebottom parents' bedroom, so Prudence and Simon. A very purple bedroom over here, which I'm guessing probably belonged to Cornelia Goth. As I said earlier, Cornelia and Agnes were sisters. Agatha's bedroom over here with a green bed, as her favourite colour is green. I think we can guess whose bedroom this is. This is Agnes's. And I really, really liked the touch of the little handbag sitting on a dressing table. And a really cool detail is they recreated the baby bedroom from The Sims 3. I figured Agnes would probably have just left this bedroom and sort of never touched it again. Quite a sensitive topic for her. So overall, I'm really glad that Agnes wasn't brought back just by herself. There's actually someone living with her that's a family member. It's a little bit less lonely and a bit less tragic. I feel like the story would have gone something like Agnes lost her second husband and her cousin probably came and moved into the Crumplebottom estate just to keep her company a little bit. And although they're complete opposites, I feel like they do have a little bit of a bond there. So now we're going to head on over to Glimmerbrook to check in on the 3 Crumplebottom sisters that I brought back into The Sims 4. I have to admit that I'm not necessarily an occult player, and this was my first time actually playing with this pack, and I've got to say it's actually really fun. So as I explained earlier, the 3 sisters are very different from each other. The youngest one is a little vain and difficult to live with. She always thinks everyone's jealous of her. The middle one is kind of the mediator of the family and just wants everybody to get along, and the older one is quite grumpy and quite snobby and a little bit condescending to everyone else, even when they have accomplished great things. So I think we can start off with the eldest sister, Beatrice. She is a bookworm, a snob, a loner, hot-headed, self-assured and a perfectionist. And amongst her likes and dislikes, she dislikes other hard-working Sims, egotistical Sims, romance enthusiasts, and anyone that's kind of like a little bit bubbly like her younger sister. Her favourite colours are green and purple, and she enjoys research and debate. She strives to be a really good alchemist, and her life aspiration is purveyor of potions. I heavily based all of their outfits on what they were wearing in The Sims 3, but kind of updated it a little bit. I gave her quite a cottagecore themed wardrobe based on her favourite colours. She has quite a mature aesthetic and doesn't show too much skin. Coming over to the middle sister, Belinda. So she is quite a happy-go-lucky Sim who really enjoys baking and cooking. So she's good, cheerful, a foodie, generous and family-oriented. She dislikes argumentative Sims, malicious interactions, arguments and complaints, and she enjoys the simpler things in life and basic fashion, and she aspires to be a master chef. She has a lot of purple in her outfits, and her overall aesthetic kind of reminds me of someone from the mid-2000s, which is really what a lot of the Sims 3 fashion was based on at the time. And then coming over to to the last sister, Bianca. She is romantic, non-committal, jealous and self-absorbed. She aspires to be a world-famous celebrity through her singing and guitar skills. She's a very flirty sim and dresses super confidently. She mainly dresses in black and white, and I feel like her outfits are pretty cute and put together most of the time. So this build is called The Good Witch, and it was uploaded onto the gallery by Wrath of Cath. It's such a pretty build, it's very cottagey and really blends into the world of Glimmerbrook. So the interior is very much cottagecore, little witch nest away in the middle of the forest. I tweaked the interior just a little bit to match their style. So we've got a little living room over here with a study area and fireplace, entranceway and a very cosy kitchen. Over here we've got a cauldron room where they make potions, particularly Beatrice, as that's kind of her thing. And I gave all three girls bedrooms very much based on their aesthetic and style. So Beatrice is a little bit more cottagecore than her two sisters. She likes greens and neutral tones and hasn't really got many like fun items in her bedroom. Obviously this is Belinda's room. She loves the colour purple and has more of a fun and bubbly personality, so I gave her a little bit more of a childlike themed bedroom. And over here is Bianca's, obviously lots of white everywhere. Her taste in decor is a little bit more modern than her sisters. They have their own common room over here with like a little games area, a piano and a mixology station. So let's go over the Sims details quickly. So Beatrice really enjoys things like gardening, research and debate. She likes reading, writing, archaeology, things like that. She isn't a bad sim, but she definitely seeks power a little bit too keenly and can be quite insensitive, so I reflected that in her bonus traits. She still is the older sister and kind of feels responsible for her younger siblings. She's a master mixer, perfectionist, potion master, observant, headstrong, which for me kind of means stubborn, and also a mastermind. If you saw my last video on the Alto family, you'll know that Vita is a mastermind too, which unlocks interactions like plant seeds of doubt, which kind of allows your sim to be very indirectly mean to other sims and kind of control their emotions. And I figured she'd use that against her younger sister. Belinda has skills in things like herbalism, baking, cooking, and also parenting too. I feel like she's kind of the mum of the family. So the traits mediator, compassionate, responsible, emotional control seem to fit her just perfectly. And the youngest sister, Bianca, has all those general skills too, and more music and social orientated skills. And she has a much more flirty and mischievous personality. So as I mentioned earlier, I was completely unfamiliar with the whole realm of magic side of the game. So obviously I made the Sims spellcasters and I didn't really know where to start from there. It wasn't very clear, but they all had this glimmer stone in their inventories. And what I figured out is that you need to use the glimmer stone to transport yourself to another realm, the realm of magic. And from here you can buy magical items, you can acquire the things to perform magic, so like a wand and a broom to fly around on, and you can also meet the sages of magic. So in the realm of magic game there are 3 branches of magic: mischief magic, untamed magic and practical magic. And that actually happened to be perfect for this household because, as you know, the 3 sisters are very different and have different uses for their magic. Bianca is kind of said to want to manipulate Sims into loving her and thinking that she's attractive so that she can be the centre of attention all the time. So I think she would use the mischief category of spells the most. Belinda is a very everyday girl and she just kind of wants to have an easy life, so I figured that she probably would prefer practical magic. And Beatrice seeks power and to be the best, so obviously the fit-in category for her was untamed magic. Each sister has more skills than the others in their kind of domain of magic. You're not locked to one type of magic in the game, which is good because if you want a little bit of mischief and a little bit of practical, you can do that. But yeah, just a happy coincidence that I managed to find a household that I wanted to put in the game that really fit those 3 different categories perfectly. And finally that leaves us with Roberto Crinkletop, which I feel like I don't even want to call him just out of spite. I just want to kind of call him by his original name. So Robert is an NPC in the world of Chestnut Ridge in the Horse Ranch expansion pack. He is actually a hidden household, so he doesn't even show up in the Manage Households tab, and the only way to see him is by being in the Appaloosa neighbourhood Monday, Wednesday and Friday at noon. So he only appears to basically be available to buy nectar off of your Sims if they have any to sell, and you can kind of slowly befriend him, like I mentioned earlier, to be able to obtain things like recipes and knowledge from him. So to get around the fact that he's an unplayable NPC, I used a mod called Control Sim, which is super useful for me making this save file. I'll leave a link for that in the description. So this mod basically allows you to temporarily add the Sim to your household to take control of them, and from here I could see his personality and skills. From the game's perspective, this doesn't actually mark the Sim as being played, it just kind of temporarily adds them to your control, so it didn't mess up the fact that he's an NPC. So the first thing I had to do when I saw his traits was to completely change them, because his traits included good and romantic. And I just think, how good and romantic of a person could you be to further traumatize your spouse who's already lost a husband previously by faking your own death? So I changed his traits up and gave him a little bit more of a fitting personality, if you ask me. If coward was a trait in The Sims 4, you can bet that I would have given him that as well. As a side note, I actually did go in and get Agnes to come find him and beat him up. I just felt like I needed to get that temporary satisfaction of Agnes finally getting her revenge on him a little bit. But I did ultimately decide to delete the relationship. I think it's best probably that Agnes doesn't realise that he isn't dead. I thought I should just keep them on their own separate storylines. But what do you think? Maybe Robert could actually try and redeem himself a little bit. Maybe he's had enough time to think about what he's done and find Agnes and apologise. Who knows? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. But personally, I think that they should be kept on their own tracks at this point. I do just want to say really quickly, thank you so much for being one of my viewers on my channel. We just hit 30,000 subscribers on this channel, which absolutely blows my mind. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. All of the Sims in today's video will be put on the gallery, apart from Robert Crinkletop. My gallery ID is jazissimming, all one word, and the custom content list used on The Sims will be in the description down below. Please let me know who I should remake or bring back next, and I will see you next time. Bye guys.